The way this looked, it's interesting to think, like here we are right here, a location you could have not been in 40 years ago. My position is I'm a professor in the Department of Biological Science.
I had Professor Sands for genetics sophomore year.
I had Professor Sands for Biology 1 and Genetics, which is Biology 2.
Sophomore year for biology, and I also had him for one of my biology labs.
This is my 41st year on the faculty at Lehigh. I started in the fall semester of 1973. One of my early memories, you know, the physics building sits right over there next to, right basically across the street from Roush. So in those days, the physics building was right across the street from the football stadium. And as a young faculty member, working all the time in my lab, trying not so I could get tenure at Lehigh, one of the things I would often do is I'd be in my lab working on a Saturday and at some point go over to part of the football game. Just walk across the street into the stadium and then come back to my lab and maybe do the next step in the experiment or something like that. When I came in '73, Bethlehem Steel was still a highly functional company. And yet, of course, all the stone buildings existed. But the one really difference between then and now with those, they were all covered with dark soot from Bethlehem Steel. They were all real dark buildings on the outside because they had had like 100 years of accumulation of the pollution in the air from Bethlehem Steel. McGinnis was a brand new building. It had been built only in '72. So McGinnis had just opened, and what was then called MART, just called MART, not Fairmart, MART Library had just opened. So those were the two brand new buildings on campus. And the interesting thing when you look at them now, you can look at them and you can see they're the same architecture. You see that? They have the same kind of bricks, the same kind of vertical columns and things like that. Those two buildings were basically built together. But I've also had obviously over 40 years of running a lab and a lot of undergraduates, both in classrooms and in my lab, a lot of undergrads who did undergraduate research projects with me and stuff like that, and then went on to either graduate school or some of them on to med school.
My favorite part about Professor Sands as a teacher was that you could tell he really cared about his students doing well, and he was always available for help when you needed him.
Well, he really cared about his students. I remember that during one of the labs, he came up to me and he was like, "Oh, I remember you in class, like, I'm pretty sure I had you," and like he did that to all his students where even though it was a huge lecture hall out of like 200, 250 students, he got to know like the faces, and he would try to like personalize like his experiences with all his students.
I served 3 times as a department chair. I served once as associate dean here in the College of Arts and Sciences a couple of years ago, and I've had plenty of opportunities and venues for helping develop the university and develop biological sciences at the university. I'll be retiring at the end of this year, and I certainly hope I will take into retirement a lot of good, memorable moments. The annual report comes out a couple months later. I'm on the cover. It's a photograph of me. All alone. I mean, the cover of the annual report is me standing there holding this nice, colorful model of DNA, right? And it was only because the model of DNA was such a nice, colored, multicolored thing. It was the photograph came out like better than the other photographs because I had the best prop or something like that. But there I am on the cover of the annual report of the university.